this talk started out to be pretty simple. We had some consultants that came to us last year and said, Nikki, where you have your trap trees, we're seeing higher numbers of stings, higher levels of infestation. So that's what we started with when I put together this talk, but I expanded it a little bit based on, Karen said, what are the traps really telling us? So we've had, what do they tell us? And I just put some, data together from years past of what I think they're telling us and how I think we should be using traps. And then I guess the big question, what people were interested in, do these lure-baited SWD traps impact infestation in trees that they're placed in or trees that are adjacent to that trap? So I think that's mainly the talk, the point of this talk. But I think we should probably think about IPM monitoring and how we used to do it traditionally and how maybe SWD is different than that. So we would always set out our, the Delta trap, we'd hang the pheromone-baited traps in the orchard, we'd check them weekly, and then we would make these management decisions based on these thresholds. So if it's moths per trap for consecutive weeks, we set our biofix, and then there's a growing degree day, a model-driven growing degree day that we use, and we make those decisions or those sprays according to those individual on-farm trap counts. So that's the way we've been telling you guys to do this for years. We've actually suggested for a particular pest, a trap on your farm is way better than a trap at the research station. So everyone, we encourage you to put it on your farm. So when we applied this traditional IPM to SWD monitoring, we tracked for SWD in our 5-county region, and then we would put out these numbers to you guys. So these are data, I think, from 2017. We provided weekly numbers by kind of a more precise location. So remember, we'd go North Manistee, there'd be a Yuba, there'd be a Central Lake, Old Mission, and so we kind of broke these out by region because we were wondering if those traps in that particular, little locale or that little neck of the woods was much more important than overall trap count in Northwest Michigan. So this is what we were thinking. So, and then a lot of times growers that had that trap on their own farm were using their individual numbers to make management decisions. So we would put out these weekly charts all the time, and then it would be like, the grower would call and be like, Nikki, you didn't call me. How many flies do I have on my farm? Or consultants would say, oh, what's, the trap count for so-and-so's farm? So that's how we've been thinking about it. And I'm wondering if we should be moving, and I mentioned this at IPM school, to a more regional SWD trapping approach. And so this is what these data look like. So this, instead of an individual farm, which is going to vary by management, it's going to vary by pruning, it's going to vary by, all these alternative woodlots and all these things, I'm wondering if this idea of this regional trap catch, so these are 2017 Northwest data, and this is the percentage of traps catching SWD. And so there's a date on the bottom here. And so 2017, so less than 10%, very, very few through June, July. And then the 19th, we get a spike, and then it goes down again, and then it goes up to 50%. And then by the 17th, which seems to be the magic date on many of our last, a lot of our trials, the 17th is where we see the trap count. So 80% of all the traps in Northwest Michigan are catching on the 17th. Our data is actually even more striking in 2018. So remember, hot and dry year, percentage of traps catching SWD, nothing, less than 10. And between the 26th and July, we go from less than 10 traps to 85% of the traps are catching. We likely think this is probably due to weather conditions. So we had a rain event in those really hot, dry days. We got a rain event would probably cause some of that. In 2019, our data are very similar. Percentage of traps catching by week, very, very, very low. The first week of July, and then we go from the 8th to that magic 15th week. Again, we are now at 100% of our traps catching. So if we review this, the number of SWD trapped begins low each season, and it remains relatively low until early to mid-July. That's what we've seen in the last 3 years we've trapped. Each season we've trapped very early fly catch. And so initially we thought, we'll use SWD to show kind of when they're present, when they show up. I feel like this first catch is something we should kind of toss out. A lot of these guys are outliers. There's always the overachievers that are going to get out there early. I think they're just outliers in the system. And I don't think they indicate that potential for infestation at harvest, which is something I showed you guys in one of the first talks. And so this, I don't think we should be using that first catch for management decision making. And back to Larry's point, I'm not sure about these individual traps on farm. I think maybe, obviously we have to trap on farm, but I'm not sure using your trap as a standalone decision-making tool is the best thing. Because again, you're gonna have adjacent woodlots in certain, I know a guy that has, tons of wild, honeysuckle, some person has, nothing next to his. So I feel like that individual trap count may not be the best thing you can use. I think you could use that in addition to this regional trap approach. So when your region's trap catch rises, growers should notice that increase of risk. The other thing is there is a bunch of noise in some of these that you can see from June 26th to July 3rd, we go from less than 10 to over 80%. So we have these adult counts from very, very low to very, very high in a week. And I think some of the work we're going to do this year by trapping daily and trying to associate those with weather patterns is going to be important for trying to figure out these different trap counts. So I think we're going to need more information on these environmental conditions that impact that activity and egg laying potential. But at this point, I think a regional trap approach is probably a good idea. The other thing that we've been trying to do for years is take this in-orchard trap catch versus the fruit infestation. So these are data from the Northwest Station. So 2017 with 34 traps, we looked at 3,400 fruit. And you can, again, look at the total SWG trapped over time. You're starting to trap a few at the mid-June, more go up at that, third week, fourth week. But they're just not, you could see, yes, there is some sort of relationship as your trap count goes up. Your larval infestation goes up, but there's not really a great correlation, I wouldn't say, to those. 2018, same thing. You're catching low numbers, and now you're like, holy cow, those went way through the roof. You get nothing. We come back 1 week later, and now we have 70 larvae in those fruit. So 2019, again, very similar. We had 28 traps. We looked through 2,800 fruits, very, very low trap counts. And then you hit that magic number of July 15th, and all of a sudden they go, your trap counts 361 adults, but you only found 7 larvae. And then at July 22nd, we counted 2,700 flies in these traps, and we only have 125 larvae. So I guess what I'm thinking is that I don't know about the relationship between this trap catch and infestation. I think our data show kind of a weak link. You could say, yes, your trap counts go up, your larval infestation will go up. But I think we need these better traps to actually set these thresholds. So I think we really can't do that traditional IPM until we have a better, more reliable trap. I'm not ready, again, Larry, we're on the same page here. I'm not ready to abandon on-farm trapping yet, but I think that this regional trap catch is a more likely valuable tool as a whole. If we look at all of these traps together, I think that's probably a better indicator of your risk rather than going just on your trap count alone on your farm. So this leads us to the issue. So if you're putting a trap on your farm, are you causing more problems? Are you causing more flies to come in, and are you increasing your infestation on your farm? So do these lure-based SWD traps impact infestation? So basically, are we increasing the stings, infestations on trees in which they're hung? So we decided to do this. So this was, again, really driven by consultants in the region. They were like, Nikki, I think we got to pull these traps. I think I see more stings. And I said, well, let's go out and try to collect some data. So we had, obviously our century bitted SWD deli cups in their 3 treatments, which were pruning treatments, but that's not a big deal. And on July 24th, we collected 2 gallons of fruit per treatment per tree, trees with traps, and then trees with no traps. So we tested for SWD with the brown sugar method. So we looked at 48 gallons of fruit. So when we went to the tree that had the trap, we would collect all that fruit from the trap tree, but then we tried to go further enough away from the trap so we wouldn't be influencing those fruit that were located near the trap. So we tried to make sure that we're moving away from the trap for the non-trap trees with no traps, those fruits. So this is it doesn't matter about more or less, I guess, but this is 17, 18, and 19 data. And then this is the average number of flies per trap. And I guess the really interesting thing here, so this is the average, so very, very low numbers in all years through all these different treatments. And then again, look at the week of July 15th. Those are the average numbers of traps. They increased considerably, and that was for all 3 years, 17, 18, and 19, at the research station with no insecticide. And then really, it's pretty much, I think, game over when you're catching that many around the 22nd. So then we basically went and tested the fruit for this larval infestation, and this was pretty interesting. So this is the average number of larvae in a half gallon of fruit. So this is where we collected the fruit from the tree where the trap was hung, and then this is the fruit from the trees that had no traps. And you can see we have a 20 plus average number of larvae where the trap tree compared to, just over 5. So those data are interesting. So then we went and this was brought to my attention. So Danielle had done some work with Larry that these guys really, these traps have a really small plume range. So can we say that, yes, these traps are calling in all these flies and resulting in increased infestation inside on the trap trees? So then I went back to start thinking about something else we've done a few years ago. Maybe these traps are calling them in like they're supposed to. You're getting the right number, you're getting your flies in. But here's something that we did this years ago, and I actually thought about it driving into work this morning. This hypothesis is that these SWD females are attracted to fruit that is previously infested with SWD. So I'll show you those data. So basically we collected infested intact fruit. So you could go out to the field and you can see the sting, and then we brought those back in. We collected fruit that was obviously infested, but the fruit had started to degrade because the larvae inside. And then we collected this non-infested fruit. So they were intact, beautiful fruit, no SWD in it. So then we place these, all these, set these up in choice tests, and we place male and females in there with each of these different types. And here are our data, and these are really interesting. So these are the number of larvae in non-infested fruits, infested intact fruit, so the fruit still looks really good, and then infested degraded fruit. And so the black isn't as important. The black was just a check for ourselves. This was the average number of larvae found on the sample date, just to make sure we were picking the fruit that we thought were infested or weren't infested. So the big thing, the big take home here is these gray bars. These are the number of larvae in fruit that's not infested. So these are beautiful ripe fruit off the tree. And then these are fruit that had a sting in them, likely were infested. And then these were infested fruit that had started to break down with brown rot or just get leaky or degrade. And you can see the number of larvae. We have over 25 larvae in the infested intact fruit. So they seem to, in this trial, choose to lay eggs in those fruit that are already infested. So then we actually, Emily had this idea that maybe we should look and see what these females are doing. So we did some observations where we took the average number of SWD visits to fruit in 2 minutes. So we actually sat there and looked at these floppies and see how they behaved, and we counted the number of fruits to each of these different categories. So not only did we have more larvae in the fruit that was infested and intact, but the females actually had more visits to those fruits than things that were not infested at all, or they were infested but started to degrade. So these are some of the conclusions. So individual traps may not be the most reliable way to determine SWD populations. I think that trap counts may be low and your larvae can be present in the fruit. I think that a regional trap count where we have a percentage of fruit in Northwest Michigan may be a better indicator of pressure. And then this is the other thing about that thing. I think those traps are attracting flies. That's what we want them to do. So we want to know if our counts are going up. We want to know. But I don't think they're crazy super effective. So I think why we're seeing a bigger population in the trap trees is, yes, we're calling those in to the trap, but then they're laying. And I think that the increased stings and infestations in the trap tree may increase the attractiveness of that tree because of the infested fruit rather than the trap itself. And I say that, I don't know that, this is just my hypothesis at this point, but we've been using traps for many, many years, and we've never seen really huge numbers of increases of stings in trapped trees. Well, this year, we had that whole situation where around the 17th, we had increased temperatures and those conditions that those flies start to, sting, lay eggs in those fruit, and I think that it may be a combination of these, the trap calls them in, yes, that's what we want them to do, but I think that when they start laying in there, I think that may call more flies in. Again, I don't know that, we'll figure that out. And then again, we're moving toward that risk model, which is based on fruit phenology, which will be, I think, a nice way to look at kind of keeping traps. So I think we should, again, I agree with Larry that I think we should, for 2020, I think we should trap for SWD in the 5-county region. And then I think we should monitor them until those exponential population rise. So when those regional, trap counts go up and, 40, 50, 70% of the traps are catching, I think we'll take those traps out of grower orchards just to make sure we're not, subjecting them to infestation. But then we'll continue to trap here at the Northwest Station so we have an idea of what continues to happen through the season. So that's kind of what I think about trapping, and just like Jason, I'll take your call. So regional consultants, thank you so much. This was something that was really brought to our attention, and we were able to kind of put together a quick research project to address your concerns. And then our staff for being flexible to do another project. And then growers that we've been trapping on their farms for a long time, thank you.